it'll you won't be live, and then you're live just immediately though. Now you're live. Now they count. Instagram started counting it down though, because I think it probably got a lot of people not knowing it was that fast, and now they give you like this little countdown. YouTube should do the same.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well,
Okay,
welcome.
and we're back.
And we're back. We're here. We made it. So just want to welcome everyone. This is our premiere episode of Ascension in the Raw. I'm so excited about this and everything we're going to talk about. And I just want to thank you, Annette, for being here with us.
I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So welcome everyone here live here on the replay. Today we're talking about dimensional shifts and just really wanting to assist you from the very beginning as best we can when we're talking about some pretty big topics, so Dimensions 101. I would love to, before we jump in, I'm feeling, this energy is so intense with the shifting. We're in a new moon in Aquarius today. We're in a new Chinese zodiac today. There's a lot of shift in frequency, and we're really feeling the North Node in Pisces now. So it's a very interesting energy to be in with Aquarius and Pisces energy. It's like really, a lot of people have been sharing they're dizzy today. Like I've been very much like spinning and a lot of intense processing. So it's the perfect day to talk about what we're going to talk about. But I just felt like, wow, with how big of a day it's been for my own process, it's good for us to just start with some intention. So I just want to invite everyone, as you're coming into the material today with us, to just breathe and just really allow yourself to arrive here now with us and just release the tension in your body. And open your heart and invite your highest possible presence. Aloha, Marixa. Thank you for joining us, love. Great to see you. And we can get started. So I don't know if you want to jump off, Annette, or
Oh, I think it's a good way to get I forgot we had the mute button. I was like, oh yeah, let me mute myself. Because these walls are thin. I think it's a good way to start when you start with the astrology, because I don't keep up with it like I used to. I think sometimes I remember when I was first starting out my awakening and journey back in like 2013, 2014, I really paid attention to astrology. I never got too much into numerology, but I really did pay a lot to astrology. And I remember one thing about Pisces too. Pisces has a lot of strong sexual energy with Pisces. It's kind of one of the things the signs was kind of known for, that, and they really always look for the a big love energy, that one true love. That was always kind of a maker of Pisces too. So I think it's interesting that as we kind of when you go through any dimensional shift, sex is a big part of that. How that shifts and changes with one dimension or the other. And love and how we view that and how we view partnerships shifts. So those are just two big ones that when you say Pisces, those are just the things I think about with Pisces that come to mind and how it shifts. And I did a video the other day, and I remember back in the day, I don't know if anyone used to watch the soap operas, daytime soap operas, like in the 80s, where they were like really big, right? And I guess 70s too, they're really big. But I remember watching them and trying to explain to a newbie what was going on with the plot, right? And it was the most convoluted plot. And you'd be hearing yourself saying it like, well, so-and-so was married to so-and-so, but then he got a brain tumor, but then he was saved. And then all of a sudden it wasn't him, he was his twin. And then he had face surgery. And you're listening to you describe this just really convoluted plot. And you're sitting there going, boy, it really sounds weird when I say it out loud, but when I'm watching it every day, you kind of roll with it. What's going on with this show? And that's kind of ascension for me. It's like when you're in it every day, it's different than when you try to explain the process to somebody else who's not in it every day. It does feel convoluted and it does change on a dime. And, just like those storylines used to change, you feel like one day it's one thing and the next day it's something else. And when you're riding the wave, you don't notice it. But when you try to talk to someone else about it, you're like, it does sound kind of weird when you say it out loud. So I'm going to kick it back to you to kind of explore that a little bit.
oh my gosh, I love that. The soap opera analogy is fantastic. I'm cracking up. Because yes, it's like so many different directions, where things can go. Pisces energy. For me, it's a merging. There's merging, there's dissolving. Last time we talked about collapsing timelines, so there's a lot of a dissolve element happening, and also sometimes dissolving of our awareness, like of different. So this all ties into the dimensional kind of shifting and bleed throughs that can happen, and like the surreal reality. So like you think about the soap opera, how anything could happen, it could go anywhere. You thought, the guy was dead, and then he comes back from the dead, or he has a twin. So it's like it's just all of this, all over the place, and it can feel like a soap opera and a mess also. But then also the higher octave is the God consciousness and the oneness, the unity consciousness. And so I love when you were talking about like sex and relationships. For me, it's also self-love and like feeling the love of the divine, and giving that to ourselves through our process. And that's one of the big pieces, is standing close with ourselves and loving ourselves as the universe loves us. And so it's interesting, and I love that, that Rumi quote about being the drop in the ocean. And to me, that's the Pisces energy. But it can be a mirage, it can be intensely confusing. It's like our own self delusions, or even getting ungrounded in a way that is imbalanced. And we're intoxicated on higher frequencies too, because we can get drunk on higher frequencies and then, misact from an emotion. And so, we're going to talk about 3D, 4D, 5D today. Annette and I talked about an emphasis on 4D though, because for many of us, and I hate to use the word trap, but it's one of the best hologram, like pieces, because you're all of a sudden you're accessing more. And yet with more, there's more of everything, more of stuff that's wonderful, more of stuff that's challenging and awful, more access, the metaphysical realms open. And it's like, it's a huge, huge exploration. And before we jump into the dimensions with the energies, and then I'll be done with speaking the astrology piece, but we're really feeling the Aquarian energy now. And so when I talk about thoughts about this new year, the new presence paradigm, there's a ton of Aquarius energy and there's a ton of Pisces energy. And so the Aquarius energy is really out there, galactic, very expanded. It can be kind of cold and metallic, but very cerebral. It's an air, you know. And then the Pisces energy, some of the things I talked about. And so it's a wild and wonderful and wonder-filled journey now. And one of the most important things to know with this Pisces energy is that now we're in the time that was talked about for so long, where we're being told, be very aware of your thoughts and be very aware of everywhere that you are inside of yourself, because we start to see how powerful our minds are, to the point where, we can create illusions out of the programs, and then we get stuck in those, and you have to work through those and then come back. And so it's like, you're questioning reality with all of this, what's actually real and true. There's time travel with this. So as we're, looking at trauma, or memories are coming up, we're deprogramming, you're actually traveling through your consciousness, through your DNA, to that time period, that event, whatever. So there's so much happening at once. And this is such a powerful time for mastery. It's quite intense. It's like game on, get ready, like use all your tools, align first. The words today that I received were, if you don't align yourself, nothing is going to be aligned. And you are not going to be happy with the blowback. If you're not aligning before taking action or literally doing anything, you're not going to be happy with the immediate, the laws of cause and effect. So those are just some of the things that it's important to know, because we're really feeling this now, this gate of this Pisces North Node energy for the next year and a half, where anything can be real and nothing is real. I mean, this is a very intense energy for us, like psychologically, as we're learning how to navigate from a quantum perspective. So I just want to open it with that it's very important that we remain spiritually grounded, while we are going through these mirages, these holograms, illusions and delusions, and come back to earth, and simplify, come back to your body, really making sure that we're balanced as much as possible. Because it's very easy to just spiral off into some interesting territory, right? And you don't want to get lost. You want to get lost, and then you want to get, find yourself again. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and wherever you'd like to go in it.
It was funny when you said that, the dreams and that it's an illusion. It was back to the soap opera analogy. I remember one season of a soap opera, the whole thing was a dream. And then they tried to, because and then they tried to pick back up. People were so mad. You're like, what do you mean? None of that happened? I don't remember what happened before that. Um, but a couple of things to to explore. I remember I watched a movie called The Atom Project. And it was a scene in the Atom Project that was pretty powerful when I watched it. And it was this little boy, and it was a time travel, and I've done a lot of videos on time travel because, our consciousness is always time traveling. It's not the Back to the Future linear time travel. That's movie time travel. There's a lot of different depictions of time travel. That's the more straight route. But, your past, and then you change one thing in the past, you change your future. Now, when we talk quantum, we talk moving up in frequency. And every time you hit a different frequency, you're in a different timeline, right? And the past is different. You remember it different. And that's why I always will focus a lot on when someone is saying something. And if you don't remember it that way, it doesn't mean they're air quote wrong. They're experiencing from a different frequency. They have a different memory of it. And the movie The Atom Project, there was a time travel involved, and the man went back and talked to his child self, and his child self and him were talking about their father and how the adult was like, well, he never had time for us, he never played with us. And the little boy's like, you don't remember it. I remember dad playing with us every night. And he would come home no matter how tired he was, we play catch, but you forgot that. So it was two people in different frequencies remembering something completely different, and extrapolating how they felt now and trying to extrapolate what they were going to feel. But it was the same. In this case, it was the exact same person, but during the, different frequencies, different programs running. And so they had a totally different imprint of a person, which I thought was a very interesting way to look at, when we change our frequency, we rewrite our past. It's all of a sudden, it's not the way we remember it. We don't take it as personal. We understand that, even with little children, and they'll be like, oh, so-and-so like someone, so-and-so likes somebody better, it was favoritism. And maybe it was, because as we go through life, we meet people we connect with more than others, and we resonate more with others. It's not anything wrong with the person we don't. It's just we don't resonate with them the way we resonate with other people. But we take that personal, because we don't have that connection someone else would have with someone. And we get back to, just to go back a little bit to that Pisces energy, it is a very strong change energy. They flow with change very well. And I know we talk about the astrological signs. I mean, some of the ones I mentioned in the beginning are kind of maybe some of the more human parts of Pisces that when you come into that sign, and once you go through certain parts of your ascension process, some of that you'll lose, and you'll come back with some of the pure aspects of Pisces. And one of those aspects for me, when I think about Pisces and that pure aspect, is that change. They flow very well with change. They don't really get stuck in anything. They're water. They don't get stuck anywhere. They just flow with the river. They don't have those attachments. Aquarius, one of the purity things as far as that sign to me was always, they don't get stuck in the past. Aquarius never gets stuck in the past. So if you have an energy of water and changing, and then they really can disconnect from the past. It has a very it's kind of an amazing quality of those signs. When you start putting a lot of that stuff together, you can really see how astrology, it can push us forward, and I don't keep up with it like I used to. And once you embody in certain the planets that would give you the most problems, I always say, if Mercury in retrograde doesn't bother you once you have integrated Mercury, or I don't know if integrate is the right word, but you've kind of merged with Mercury inside yourself. It doesn't bother you anymore. It's not something that bothers you anymore because you don't have to integrate in that energy. You don't have to make sure you're speaking clearly. But if you're not speaking clearly, then you're going to have an issue with Mercury retrograde every time, until you become one with that planet, until you embody. That's what I'm going for. Embody that planet. Once you embody that planet within yourself, activate it within yourself, and become that planet, it won't bother you anymore. It doesn't have that effect. You don't even really keep up with a lot of that stuff anymore, unless you're teaching, or you're showing someone else how it impacts. So as we start to get into this dimensional talk, change is not, for fixed signs, it is not a strong suit of of me for sure, because I'm a very fixed sign. But as we go into ascension, just like those soap opera storylines change, like on a dime, and we're talking some radical changes, then we have to learn to do that. And that's where we drop off. That's where people get stuck in that fourth dimension. And it's a big space to be in, but it's a big place to play in because there's so many mainstream things in there. Tarot cards to me fall into the fourth dimension. Pendulums, you're to go on with Reiki, to me is fourth dimension. Spirit guides, a lot of certain wordings people use, that's fourth dimensional kind of stuff. Mediums, fourth dimensional kind of stuff. They're more mainstream, so there's a lot of space there. There's a lot of space to play and be in that dimension. So, and there's the consciousness in the beginning and the consciousness at the end are so vastly different because we're here for so long. That those are just some things I was going to throw out. So I'll let you take it from here and kind of.
I love that. Thank you so much. And before we jump now, we're gonna jump everybody into the dimensions. I want to share what the fixed signs are. So you can, out there in the audience, you can look at your sun sign and your whole chart in general is recommended, not just the sun sign, but the fixed energy, the astrology signs, Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. Very fixed. So we have the hardest time with change. And one of the pieces we were going to go to, I love, you brought us there, and that was about change, because I wanted to talk about what I'm going to go into, and then we'll dive into the dimensions here. So this is, before we jump in, everybody, I want to make it clear that this is a new Earth transmission. So the frequency that we're in right now, there's no judgment with anything we're saying. We're doing our best to convey concepts and information. And in New Earth, there is no hierarchy. We're all learning. We're all in different places. We're bridging worlds and concepts together in this format, right? And so one of the big pieces with everything we're discussing here is nervous system regulation. That was like the phrase all day for me, nervous system regulation, because we're going through these processes through the different dimensions, through the emotional body, through the mental body, through what we touched on with some time travel, And for me, I'm sharing it from the perspective of writing the DNA memories, the Akashic memory and DNA to an event that occurred, to see, oh, that's the charge. That's where that trigger's root is for me right now, right? And start to continue to bring that into the now. And so emotional regulation, emotional mastery with this. It's a huge part of 4D. That's how I got locked in 4D for fucking forever, because I didn't know for so long. And that's why I'm really excited to be here with you all with Annette, because we're going to give you what we didn't have. And of course, everything's perfect, but it's really nice to be able to be like, damn, I wish I knew that sooner, And and it's all relative. But so what I want to share is, we could be in this process where we're not happy, we're not feeling too good, it sucks, it's really not comfortable. And we want to get back to that higher place inside so bad. And we will. But the thing is, you can't ascend the vibrational frequency or the dimensional frequency ladder when we have to deal with something. So we got to deal with what's here now. So we say, you got to feel it to heal it, right? And let it flow through and then carry on. And then you'll be able to open again and rise your frequency again from the body. So it's clearing the density from the body, the emotional density from the body. So a lot of that is 4D. And I want to share this. So the example here, clearing an emotional trigger, because with change, that's exactly where I was going to start with this. I love it. Annette already went there with the concepts of change. So emotional triggers. We can't be a universe when our human ego is going through something, right? When a trauma is triggered, what's happening at the nervous system, we're going into a different part of the brain, right? And it's also the root chakra. So we're going into this limbic brain process where trauma is literally hardwired in. And this could be a memory that you're going to have. Something's going to happen. It's going to trigger this feeling. And you're like, wow, why am I responding so much to this? So then you travel, right, through your awareness to see what aspect of me is getting triggered by this. And then when you explore the aspect, you can look at, to describe it in a linear way, the age or what was going on, what's the story, what's the scenario. And the entire nervous system with this, just understand this process of the ascension, the awakening and the ascension. It's a lot of nervous system because that's the light body and the new way that the light, the consciousness is shining onto our subconscious to bring all up, right? So I want to share, if you're feeling trigger happy right now, there's so much electricity with this energy that it's all about the deprogramming again and working through the ego again. And so I just want to normalize this so that we're not having judgment about what's coming up or where we are. For anyone out there in the audience, it's so important not to judge. And we all fall into it. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in that again, right? Well, welcome to programming. Hardwiring your brain is quite a process, of consistency, right? So you want to have compassion for you, for yourself, and for all. But the nervous system with triggers has a tripwire, but it's designed that way so that you can rewrite it, right? And that's a lot of 3D is getting triggered. 4D, we start to see, oh, there are more tools for me to work with this, right? And there's a lot more, which will go. Um, but I want to just share that, we have to regulate ourselves emotionally, energetically, and in the nervous system, sometimes all day or quite a few times a day right now with these energies, because it's all about the ascension process now for the whole planet. And everyone's in different phases, of course. But when it's natural, we will come right back into that frequency, right? So you can't force it. You don't need to force it. Where you are is perfect. We have to look at it as a nervous system, and you have to look at it as hardwiring, right? With all the wires, you don't want to fry yourself. I think there's more than enough out there that's making it very easy to feel fried right now. Hence, I say nervous system regulation. So I just wanted to make sure that I also added that onto this when we're looking at everything. And then I'm going to pass the mic to Annette. Wherever you want to go.
It's funny. There was something you said, and then I lost it. I was like, "Oh, that's a good point," and then I couldn't remember it. I think it's important to know that when we do our dimensional shifts, and we were going to focus more today on the fourth dimension, which that's one foot in the third dimension, which is human consciousness, created realities. That's all that means. It's just realities created with human consciousness. And then fifth dimension, which is when you start going into feeling what your soul kind of feels like, the peace you feel. I would always say you going from acting normal to acting natural. So in the beginning, it doesn't feel normal because it's natural, but we don't know what that feels like. So we feel like it's kind of strange. In the fifth dimension, your eyes start to lighten up. Your eyes will get lighter. You start to see some difference in your appearance. I think as far as, you have more of a glow to you a lot of times when you do hit that. And the fourth dimension, you're kind of sitting in the middle. And, I was listening to something today, and the quote was, the hardest place to stand is in the middle. And I would agree with that, because you really can't stand in the middle. We can say fourth dimension, and to me, I'm always usually cycling between three, normally three. You're kind of 3, 4, 5. You're going to be 4, 5, 6. And our consciousness can reach so much higher than our body frequency can. So your body frequency is always kind of playing catch up. I always look at it like a hot air balloon. Like, your consciousness pulls the body up to a different frequency, but it is limitless on really where it can go. But the body's not limitless. The body can, I think the highest anyone's gone with the body is 12th dimensions. Will that change? It might, but that's what right now someone has achieved. So when you start to get into the fourth dimension, and you start to get into the dimensional shifts, and you start getting into being triggered, and being triggered is a really big so what happens when we work on our phones. When you start to feel triggered, and I think one thing about the fourth dimension for me was I didn't realize how long I sat in it. I thought I was way beyond the fourth dimension when I was still smack dab in the middle of the fourth dimension. And it is hard to stand in the middle because you really can't stand in the middle. To me, you don't really live in the fourth dimension. You're taking fourth dimensional things and using them to get to the fifth dimension, but you don't really doing that on purpose. You think you're trying to fix your third dimensional life with the fourth dimensional stuff, and then pulling up, but it's really pulling you into the fifth. So it's your soul. It's the kind of the biggest joke your soul plays on you. It tries to give you all these things. Crystals fall into the fourth dimension. Some people get into Indaras in the fourth dimension. I didn't. I was more into crystals than I went into Indaras. But when you're in that fourth dimensional space, you don't really know you're there. And you might not even know what being triggered means. You just know you got pissed off. That pissed me off, or that made me sad. We always will attach it to the external, not understanding that no, we were already sad. It just triggered that to come inside of us. It triggered that to come, kind of awaken. But the hardest thing when you start going through these changes is that you just appear so different to everybody else because you're not living, you're starting to detach from the human consciousness realities, the human beliefs, the human systems, and detaching from what has supported you and, what if you went to college or whatever you were training to do for so many years, now you don't want to do that anymore. It is a very rough ride in the fourth dimension in a sense because you're having to look at stuff that you had created for decades, and say, I don't want to do that anymore. And to get people to understand that. And in that fourth dimension, to me, we still want people to understand that. We still want people to understand why we're doing it. But because that's not where they are, they don't understand that. They don't understand why we're doing these things, why we don't want to do what used to excite us doesn't excite us anymore. And what we used to want to do, we don't want to do anymore. And we want to go into something else, but we don't really even know what that is in the fourth dimension. So when we do feel like we don't know what to do next, or we don't really know what happens, and I think that's why a lot of us to kind of try to go back to human realities a lot, and people can get lost in the fourth dimension for a long time. One, they'll base their income around it. I mean, if you're channeling and that's how you're making your money, you're afraid to stop doing that or call it something else because that's how I made my money. And you'll see people stay there for a super long time, even though to me they're really not. It's just more of a. It's almost like a resting place for us to do a lot of our clearing, but I feel like most of my deeper clearing came after the fourth dimension. But it's almost this not feeling comfortable no matter where you are. Not anyone who ever left home for a long period of time and tried to come back, whether you went to college or went off and got married and then came back, and it doesn't feel right. You don't feel like you belong there. You feel like you've changed or something's changed. It's not the same because our frequency changed. We were doing it all along. We just didn't do it very quickly. We didn't do it very fast. We did it in smaller increments. That's why nothing really ever changed that much for us because we weren't changing our body frequency. We were enough to get a new reality. We weren't pulling our body up that high. We were just noticing different shifts and changes in ourselves. Even if we go back to astrological signs, different parts of your life, you were attracting different signs. And then all of a sudden you never see that sign, or some signs you never see, and then you would start attracting different ones because you were calling forth people to assist you with clearing other things, but we didn't see it like that at the time. And you're always in these almost like these pockets. To me, the fourth dimension, it kind of feels like you're in a lot of pockets and you jump to one pocket to the other. And now you think, oh, I'm so much higher. I remember having a conversation in the car with this lady on how far we were past the fourth dimension. Like we're in the 10th dimension. We were so stuck in the fourth dimension. It was embarrassing. Now to think back, it's like, it was embarrassing, man. We didn't even know what we were doing because you just don't. You don't understand how much is ahead, which is probably good because if you did, you probably wouldn't go, honestly. If you knew what was going to happen, you would, my friend would always say she had every reality, she had a trap door and she would always pull it and go through, you know? Well, we don't get the trap door anymore. You can't jettison out of these realities anymore. You have to kind of set through them and try to wrap them up or put a pin in them to wrap them up later. So I'm going to kick it back to you for you to kind of go through that. And
Oh, thank you. That's so great. I just love these topics so much. So I want to kind of do a little overcap. I'm sorry, guys. I'm so expanded. It's hard to talk. Overview, recap of the dimensions. Just a few little key notes, just a few little buzzwords for everybody. Shift to the dimensional realms, right? So 3D. Here's some little keywords for you to play with. Ego hell, mental anguish, where we are the most unconscious, right? The smaller sense of self, limiting beliefs. 4D, all of a sudden we open up to metaphysical, meta, the next realms above, right? Psychic gifts start coming online. Where there's a limbo with this too, though. Like Annette was talking about, like in between, this awkward in between. You don't really fit in the old world anymore, but you don't really fit in the new one. And you're like, oh my God. And then you're trying to figure out so much and explore so much. This is a lot of the seeker mode for many of us, studying metaphysics and all kinds of different initiations and things, different mystery school traditions. Also, emotional clearing begins, just beginning, because for me, it was about the storytelling through the exploration of lineage. So you could start to really open up to galactic lineage, and memories start coming, certain pieces.
I want to mention dreams. Just throw that in there, dreams, because that's when the dream world starts opening. And I forgot about that, but I just want to put that in before I forget.
I love that you brought that. Thank you. So it's like, everything opens up. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh, I can astral travel. I can work in my sleep state, like all these things, and we entertain multidimensionality. And like I talked about, like all metaphysical subjects open up. Um, so there's this, the storytelling becomes very powerful. And you notice that, humans, the human tendency to fixate on stories and lineage and I'm this race and da 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 da. It's like you want to use each piece as a stepping stone. So you don't want to get locked in to this is all I am, this is the truth. This is where you start to see people get really excited and also fixated on the stories and the beliefs and the lineages and what truth is. And so we still don't have the emotional maturity, the emotional yet sense of self. And one of the biggest pieces for me of all time, to Lisa Transcendence Brown, where she said, we're the star seeds and we don't want to grow up. And so 4D is a play realm too, in many ways, as we're exploring so much, and it's magical too, but it's not pure yet. We still have so much ego stuff to go through. And when she said all the star seeds need to grow up and mature into star beings, oh boy, was that huge for me to see, like, oh, I'm still really hanging on to these emotional stories, right? Victim consciousness, the duality, the battling, the Orion Wars. Like, there's so many ways we could talk about this. Um, all these different tensions throughout the history on the planet. And what's funny about that is, Gaia is opening up more and more of the Akash for us to see even more of human history. So people want to, fixate and argue on stories, lineages, how did humanity get here? All these things. Are we on flat earth? All these things. There's so many things to debate. And it's all great. And we also don't want to get fixated on it. We want to keep going. This is barely the beginning. So now 5D, the gates to the heavenly realms through the heart. We start to come more into the heart, coming into love. It's the only way to get to 5D is through our heart. And so that's why we keep trying to go to 5D and 4D, but we still have a great deal of pain, suffering. There's still heaviness, whatever the stories, whatever, taking our power back. But there's this home frequency here of peace. And so once we return to peace, it's like, oh, okay, I'm home again. And just like Annette was saying so fabulously, that's the real, actual, natural, innate self. And the whole process to get to the 5D is essentially deprogramming the artificial self that were, behaviors and personas and all these things that were made as a defense mechanism, essentially a survival mechanism. These masks, the armoring, all of this, right? So 5D is all about de-armoring, right? But peace, enjoyment, 5D is perhaps for many of us, like depending on what you went through, what your initial, I would say, boots on the ground training, your childhood was like, this may be the first time you feel good. And you want to stay in that soft place, the fluffy place. The colors change, the crystalline realms start to open. You got more pastels. You're also starting to get bleed through of more information. The more you can keep your heart open and stay open and soft, you're getting bleed through of higher dimensional information. And yet we still have pieces of ourselves that are stuck in other, like the 3D and the 4D. So one of the big pieces for me is like, where are we still humanizing things? Because if that was the only way that we ever saw something, a function, an aspect of society, an aspect of existing in a physical human form, but we have to bring a whole new consciousness through to that, right? And so what I wanted to say is, and then I will pass it to you, parts of us can easily access one dimension and other parts stuck in other dimensions. And it is our responsibility to ascend that aspect, to ascend, to then bring that to the highest. And boy, that's where the real work begins. And so you want to make sure you're not bypassing And I want to share, you can tune into anything and feel and start to receive information on what you really feel about it under the thoughts you think you're thinking. We're going to go beyond thinking and into feeling and perceiving and what are the body sensations. And so this is where I love Annette brought in change, because I was going to say, okay, let's do an experiment, everyone. Tune in to anything, any concept, and feel what you feel about it through your body. So let's experiment. Bring your attention to the idea or the word of change, and that change is imminent, that we are change, right? But if you're observing fear of change, fear of the unknown, then we walk you through by saying, well, the next step is, what is this fear? Why? What is the story around it? So you want to keep opening. Where is this? Perhaps in the body or in the experience, in our consciousness. This is where the time travel can come in. And who said it? Who said that? Was it us? Is it, something that we were imprinted with hearing in society? Who said that? Which aspect said that? So you see how much it becomes this process of everything that presents and arises, then it's up to us to determine all these various pieces. So I like to think about, when we talk about like English and like writing, like, what is it? Who, what, when, where, why? That can be a helpful who, what, when, where, why to assist you in this deprogramming and the exploration to see, oh, okay, there's just another piece of me that now the light's being shed on it for me to bring it up, to love it essentially, right? To validate the emotions, and then to thus all of a sudden it's lighter. You can feel the shift inside. Um, and so I want to share that, this is quantum entanglement. So through quantum entanglement, you can put your consciousness on any topic, any word will open a file for you. And you use this process: who, what, when, where, why. You can explore where, what realm, the memory that these are. And this is where I was saying earlier, time travel happens through the DNA Akash, the libraries of memories. So you want to observe what is. You want to observe what is. You may not have the name for the feeling, and you can ask for the words. For the words, you may hear song lyrics. A lot of times I'll hear song lyrics or funny sound clips from my favorite shows, funny things. Or you'll see a bumper sticker or a license plate or the number sequences, So ask, and this is part of the fun of opening up with the 4D and above, is the messages, right? But you can ask for the words or a phrase through the memory. And then bringing in, and I'm going to let Annette take it, is once we do the clearing, then our frequency starts to rise, because we've released that density now. And then you can welcome in, oh, I'm in my love again. Oh, I'm in my peace again. Thank God. Thank God I'm home again, And then you can open your mind, your body softens, and you can then bring your awareness into the dream weaving, right? And imagineering new realities, because you've cleared that space. So these are all huge, huge things, but I just want to put it out there into the ether for everybody for this today and going forward in this new realm. And thank you for being here, because you see now how important going through, sifting through the dimensions can be. I'll pass it over to you, Annette.
Oh, that was so good. So well, we don't like good or bad here, but that was really very, very it was interesting the ways that I always like to do these, because everyone has a different way of saying it, and a different way of looking at it. I don't even know if when I was in the fourth dimension, I knew what quantum was. I mean, you'll hear it, but I don't know if I understood it, to be honest. If I'm really honest, I don't think I did. I was still trying to fix a lot of my human realities with the fourth dimensional stuff. And dreams were big. To me, that's the first thing that opens up for people, because you can't dream. I took dream classes for like a year, right? Robert Moss does a lot of great dream books. If anyone wants to kind of get into dream books, they probably feel maybe a little linear now if I went back through them. But if you just want to kind of open up, he also did classes. I took like a year worth of all this stuff for dreams. Eventually I got kind of bored with it, but it kind of opens you up, right? And in the beginning, that might be the only place you can open, because you're not bound by the human frequency, right? I had a friend and she was not into any of this stuff, but she would say to me at night, she would feel her consciousness go out of her body and do flips. It just flip around and flip around and flip around. And she went to a very linear human doctor and tried to explain it to him. And she would do that, and he just kind of didn't say anything about it and just left the room. I don't think he even knew what to say. So a lot of this stuff happens. I mean, our soul doesn't care about the past. It's not going to give you. A lot of people to take dreaming and want to put it in a box, and that's a lot of really what human realities are. They're a box, and we try to take everything and put it in a box. And I dreamed about a snake because once I saw a snake. No, I mean, don't worry about what a dream dictionary says. None of that shit matters. Okay, you're looking at different dimensions. That's all it is. And to me, there's always going to be bleed through. There's no closed systems. Everything bleeds through. Will you have the same thing happen exactly the same way? Probably not. Is it energetically very similar? Probably will be. Especially repeating dreams. A lot of this stuff in the beginning, that's huge. Fourth dimension, and when you mentioned license plates and words on trucks, that was huge for me. Huge for me when I was trying to get guidance. And a lot of the fourth dimensional realities, we're trying to get guidance, and you don't really care where it's coming from. You will take a message on a license plate like it is the most gospel thing you've ever seen when you're asking for something, because you haven't really figured out yet that you programmed it all. Like, there are no red herrings in our universe. We don't just put a pen there and say, oh, I'm just going to throw this red pen here for no reason. The red pen's there for a reason. We just don't know what it is yet. And we might consciously not understand why we put that red pen there for 15 years. But there are no red herrings. We don't create that, right? We don't have that kind of waste of energy. Our reality, if you believe in the same, a lot of people are really big into the simulation theory right now. And to me, that is the best way to kind of explain it. Every dimension is a simulation. They're prettier than the other ones, prettier than the human simulation, but they're still kind of simulations. So when you start really wanting to open up, and if we want to even take it back there for a while, just how do you even start? And if anyone ever has seen the show Outlander, and I don't want people to get too bogged down in the whole, romance, because I guess it was a romance novel. But one of the things that always strikes me if you watch Outlander is, the whole premise is this woman can travel through stones and she goes back in time, right? But she always tries to change what's going on in time. She'll just give some examples. She'll go and try to talk to a certain culture, right? And say, you guys should not be so nice. We're talking about the Native Americans. Don't be so nice, because eventually this is going to go south for you. But nobody wanted to hear that. The collectives were kind of set in what they were doing. They didn't want to know about that yet. They don't want us to make trouble. We're not ready for that for another 100 years or whenever that's going to actually start taking place. So she would always go back and try to change something. But she couldn't, and she would never kind of be able to move anything because the collectives weren't ready for that yet. So a lot of our fourth dimensional realities is realizing what we're not ready for, what we don't want to hear. And you can get the same message 15 times. I can tell you, I got the same damn message 15 times. But if you're not ready to hear it, it doesn't matter. And I think that's one of the most honest things we can be with ourselves. Is, yeah, I got an answer. I didn't like it, so I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear it, but I know what I'm supposed to do. And anytime I ignored that, I would get really set up a really rough reality later. And you start to even understanding when that karmic clearing comes back, or when you kind of finish the karmic timeline you started when you did that one thing. Because I'll remember that one thing. And it could have been 3 years ago, but I'll remember specifically that memory comes up. And I'm like, that's when I started this. I started this whole timeline when I did that one thing. Because sometimes we don't want to hear it. We don't want to know. And it just, that show always strikes me, because she always goes back and keeps trying, and different people kind of did the same thing. We're trying to change, you need to go do this now because this is going to go south for you, and it doesn't matter. But if you look at our world today, if someone showed up and said, hey, all these cell phones, you got to throw them all in the trash, all this stuff's going to happen if you don't, who's lining up to do that? There will be no one in that line to line up and do that, because nobody wants to hear that. And a lot of the fourth dimension, especially when you get to start getting to the latter parts, and I say the latter parts, when you start understanding you can't go back. A lot of the beginning of the fourth dimension is just to have some kind of something, because you feel like the physical world is something more. There is a hand behind the curtain. It's not just this physical stuff. There's a definite difference between any kind of metaphysical understanding and just not knowing it's there. And that to me is kind of the beginning of that fourth dimension, when you start to be, maybe there is something more here. Maybe energy is important. What does that mean? And I've been in places and talked to people you never thought would be interested in any of this stuff. And we would do energy balls with our hands and try to stretch out the energy and feel different people's energy. And it was exciting for people, because they didn't even know what a lot of that stuff really was, but they had an interest in it. And to me, that interest is the spark. But if you're trying to talk to someone that has no interest in the spark, it's just because they're not there yet. And it's hard for us to want people to move with us. And the fourth dimension, there's also this I didn't watch the show, but it was a show. It was a remake of Willow, I think. Not a remake, but the series Willow. It was a movie a long time ago in the 80s, I think. And these people had a wagon, right? And the wagon was breaking down, and they kept getting in the wagon and taking the wagon everywhere. And this reviewer who was reviewing the show said, just burn the damn wagon. Why do you keep putting everyone in the wagon and dragging all your shit with you? Just burn the wagon. It keeps breaking down. Why do you keep taking the wagon everywhere? And he's like, just burn the damn thing. But the fourth dimension is kind of the wagon. We want to keep taking everything with us. We want to take this, take it back in the human reality and see if we can make that work. Not realizing that that's us pulling us out. But we double down on it because we mess it up more because our frequency is changing and none of it fits. So now it's even more convoluted than it was before. So now we're going to double down and bring more stuff in here and try to now fix it. And none of it works. But lessening the load. And that's the one thing that I would say. Lessening the load of really what is important? What do you think can transition? Because honestly, for me, very few things transitioned, and the things that did had to go through a lot of purification too. And that's my purification, of how I felt about the thing. Because it's never about the thing. It's about how the thing makes us feel. It's about how these people make us feel. It's not really about them. It's the feeling we have around it. We can do the same act twice, but the energy of why we're doing it is what depicts the frequency and what depicts our timeline, what depicts what we're doing and why we're really doing it. And if we have that agenda of why we're trying to, and the fourth dimension, that is all agenda. Anyone who's in the fourth dimension cannot tell me they don't have an agenda, because they sure as hell do. Okay? We do. We don't even realize we have one yet. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. Most of the time we do. We don't realize it as an agenda. We're going to try to paint it as like a goal or something, but it's still an agenda. Because that's what that whole process is. It is just learning new things. It is a huge playground. I think you really hit on it. It is a place to play and a place but you don't want to nest there. And I see a lot of people nest there, like cats when they get ready to lay down, they're just nesting, they're just getting all comfortable there. Because eventually it will fade too. And we have to go on even if no one goes with us. And honestly, most of the time, no one's going to go with you. Because you're going to be in realities where you are the light for them. And now you have to go on. And they'll have to find their light. And it might not be their time yet. Just like trying to make someone collectives move that don't want to move, or if it's not their time yet, it's not their time yet. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how profound it is. I always will also say, if no one's asking your opinion, don't give it, because no one gives a shit and they're not going to hear it. We give it because we want to hear it. We want them to hear it, but no one asked for it, right? So it doesn't matter. It can be so profound, it doesn't matter. It can be the most profound thing in the world you just said, but it goes on deaf ears because nobody wants to hear that. So, all right, I'm going to kick it back to you to explore those or whatever you want to explore.
I love that. Thank you. It's so great. I appreciate you touching on that, things we don't want to hear. That's huge. And that's huge. And that, to me, that's part of, when we are playing and we're enjoying things like the starseed, activations. And it's a lot of ego gratification. And this is an important step because, we're exploring our psychic gifts, our galactic lineage. Like, there's so many exciting things, 3D fucking sucks, And so 4D, it's like, oh my gosh, and then you start to go deeper and you realize, okay, so I'm looping, because if I'm consistently just fixating on, these are all still very dual things, right? There's still battles, there's still us versus them. So there's still an enormous amount of separation when we're looking at like the 3/4D back and forth, back and forth. There's still an enormous amount of separation from what's calling, which is now, okay, yes, we've got these great identities and stories, and we do name changes through the wazoo. These are all important. because we're starting to feel into different aspects. But then all of a sudden, you're going to start hearing or waking up to the clarion call, which is it's time to mature, it's time to go to the next level. I want to connect more with source. I want to get to know, more like my heart, my higher heart. This is where the higher ascended masters start to come, the Christed energies start to call us for the purification, for the crystalline, just like Annette was starting to get us into. And so then you have to start, okay, cool, yes, it's really cool that I've explored my galactic lineage. This is all a part of me, but it's not the overall identity. It's not the overall motivation. A lot of us, we're learning so much knowledge. We can't wait to share knowledge. And again, you do get a little discouraged because people that aren't there don't want to hear it. And you could be bursting with excitement about all these new potential everythings, learning so much about food and everything, the nature of reality. And I want to share some fun movies here. Okay, so this is a great movie for like when you're just getting into the fourth dimension. What the bleep do we know? And that's a wonderful one because it starts to go into metaphysics and science and the science of consciousness and like our intention and our focus. So it's like a very good little dabble into quantum physics and preparing us for the responsibility of creator consciousness eventually, right? Another really fun one is the comedy is Defending Your Life. And it's a really good comedy. And these people die and they have to go before these tribunals, these councils of how do they do in their 3D life before they can ascend. And so it's a wonderful metaphor. It's Albert Brooks, who's great, he's very funny, and Meryl Streep, and they both meet in heaven, but it's the fourth D because it's kind of the limbo, it's kind of the purgatory. It's like you're in this beautiful heavenly realm, there's harp music playing, like, there's amazing new access and magic and all this. And yeah, it's not the end goal. It's just the transitional. It's almost seeing like a station, not a bus station, but like the tram, underground. Like there's bullet trains, and you get off and you explore, and it's time to you got to keep going with the stream. So now, a movie that's really great for going from 4D into 5D with the purification and then starting to take responsibility for ourselves as energy and starting to really mature into sovereignty on many levels. But the Celestine Prophecy, and that's a great book, but the movie is beautiful because it has wonderful visuals to show you the intermingling of people's energy. And as we are purifying, our old dynamics like power and coming into power and what pure power is, and leaving the 3D, 4D energetics of like domination, force, control, battle, us versus them. I'm going to take over. Like there's no longer this excess need to control. We're starting to let that ebb away. And yes, we're going to have control programs come up for years, even if you're spending most of your time in 5D. So the other thing I want to touch on, and I'll pass it back to you, Annette, is as we are spending more time in 5D, essentially it becomes like, for me, it just felt like full being obsessive with wanting to hold that feeling good, feeling safe, feeling calm and relaxed and open and receiving information and experiencing beauty and sharing beauty, more of the divine creator, creatrix, like sharing work, like receiving light codes and then transmitting them. And so then it's like, it kind of becomes like, oh my God, I love being here. This is heaven on earth, but we have to cultivate it because you could be in that space and then something can come and you're triggered and okay, I just barreled down, into this whole other dormant part of the subconscious. And we are on an expedited process of that right now. But I just wanted to share, so you could spend some time as well in 5D, and that's always the gateway, that's always the entry point back home to ourselves as a higher aspect, so we're not allowing the lower aspects to drive the wheel, the wounded parts, the trauma pieces, right? We're doing our best to see clearly. And align yourself before you do anything. And then there will be bleed throughs from the next higher pieces. So I'll pass it back to you, Annette.
It was something that came to me when you were speaking, and that was fourth dimension to me is it's exploring, not becoming. You're not becoming anything in the fourth dimension. You're not becoming anything technically in the fifth dimension. but you're exploring something else, you're exploring something different. And Marissa gave some great books. Those are some great books that are good activations to just get you to feel it a different way, see it a different way, understand it a different way. Because there's so many different ways people say it, because not everyone's going to get it the same way. I can remember being in different conferences, listen to people talk about very similar topics, and sometimes someone says something just a little different. Or you'll watch a TV show and there'll be a word in there, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that, I didn't never thought about it like that. But because we don't really become anything in the fourth dimension, we kind of still have our human identity with us. And to me, I didn't shed that until I got in seventh, eighth, ninth, when those things start really stripping away. Because honestly, if everything started stripping away in the fourth dimension, and you have little teeny things strip away, but to me, the big shifts don't come till later. But that's because we don't know what we don't know. And was I aligning anything in the fourth dimension? No. Was I speaking up for myself? Maybe more, a little bit more. If you start to see some of your patterns, I started to see some of my programs, and I started to see how I was creating some things. I was still into some very human things. I wasn't, I was still, having sex in the fourth dimension. These things had not gone in that dimension. I was still doing a lot of this stuff that I would look back and say that was kind of fourth dimension. And the reason why we're doing stuff, it's still the reason. It's really not the acts, but more the reason we're doing it. But I didn't know how to align anything. So a lot of stuff in the fourth dimension, I found I just kind of left. You kind of walk away. And because I didn't know how to align it, I didn't know how to certainly align anything at its highest. I mean, I didn't know how to close anything out. And our human is still, to me, very much, we're still defaulting to our human programming for me in the fourth dimension. When it got ugly and it hit the fan, I was going to kind of go back into self-preservation mode. I think that's why we sat there for so long, because we really have to have a lot of stuff go, for us to kind of move through that dimension, and for us to see that I really don't need all of that stuff. Because by the time you get out of at the end of the fourth dimension, you don't want to really talk to anybody in the beginning of the fourth dimension, because they're still trying to utilize everything to assist with the third dimension. And I know I keep harping on that, but I think it's important to understand that that's how we get in it. That's how we do it. That's why we do it. No one's going to say to me, oh, I got into all this stuff because my human life was so amazing, I just then wanted to explore something else. Most people don't do it like that. Most people are going to say, well, I wanted something else because this isn't, even if you have everything you wanted in the human realities, you weren't happy. Right? I mean, no one's going to go into all this other stuff if everything's perfectly amazing where they are. And that's why we have to have the bumps. We have to have the things that pushes out. But if the other people haven't had the stuff to push them out yet, they're not going to be setting in the fourth dimension for any length of time. So I didn't become anything in the fourth dimension. I was exploring, but I wasn't becoming anything. I don't even know if I knew what I was going to become. Did I know I had different aspects? I'd heard of that. I started noticing probably more people around me were very much entrenched in human realities that I had started getting out of. And you start noticing people and knowing everyone's an aspect of you. I found myself looking at people going, how are you in my life? How are you even still here? I mean, am I still like you somewhere? Because you shouldn't even be in my life anymore. And it's definitely, you start peeling things back. You start putting it under a microscope. You start becoming like a detective. I'm really looking into a lot of this stuff. Why are you my friend? What aspect of you, what aspect are you of me? Why do I still stay at this job? Why did I ever want this job? Why am I at this job? It just brings up more questions. To me, there aren't a lot of answers in the fourth dimension. You just kind of we're getting more questions. And a lot of that stuff doesn't get answered until later on. Because once you get to, I think Marissa said it perfect, once you get to that piece of the fifth dimension, even if you can just touch it here and there, that's what I'm working toward. And when you're not there, you're slipped back, because once what that feeling is. But I'm going to kick it back to you. I do want to mention the Penny Pierce books that people are trying to open up, and you're kind of in the beginning of, or someone's in the beginning of opening up. The Penny Pierce does a lot of intuition books, and they'll seem very linear, but to someone who's very linear, it might be a good opening place. So if you know people that are just beginning, or you just want to kind of you think they'd be interested in some of that stuff. Penny Pierce was something I read very, very in the beginning, and there was another one called uh, gosh, divine activations. I don't remember if you heard of it. It was like different activations, activating divinity or something, or you're running different frequencies. And that was a book, and I can't remember. I'll get it to you, and you can post it in your community because I can't remember exactly what it was. I used to have a whole reading list on my, like, The Secret. That's a great book. I mean, it's just it might feel very linear, and it's the manifesting is very fourth dimensional too. You're still trying to manifest something you want. To me, the fourth dimension is still all about what I want, but it's not the fifth dimension purity about taking care of me. It's the fourth dimension. I want this shit, and how do I get it? And can I use any this way to get it? So, it's still so not pure. And I don't even feel like, honestly, when I got to the fifth dimension, I felt that pure. If I'm really honest, I don't know if I did. I mean, I just don't. And maybe I experienced them differently than other people. I don't know. I'm just, to me, I didn't even feel it then, or know if I knew when I was there completely. But anyway, I'm gonna kick it back to you now.
I love that. That's so important. Everything you shared is so good. And I'll touch on what you were just saying about, the fifth dimension. And for me, so long, it was about finally feeling good again, and feeling creative again. And a lot of these, I would attribute them to like a divine creator being kind of consciousness to feel the oneness. But there is still so much clearing because when you start to feel pure love through yourself, what is the first thing it's going to do is bring up everything that does not have that, where we have not given ourselves that. And I would say that process of deepening into self-love, unconditional self-love, and unconditional peace, and surrendering control, going through deeper and deeper layers of fear and faith and trust. And then as you are calling more and more to purity, as you start to realize, oh boy, if I don't do the purifying work, I'm going to continue, to loop this stuff. And I don't want to do it like this. So as much as we can, we still have to go through things because of the divine design. So you can't really prevent, but you can commit, and really focus and bring it back to, yes, we all deserve to have a positive experience. And removing the judgment piece is a huge one of where we are or what it looks like, or, oh, I'm not good enough, or, oh my God, I'm reviewing this thing again. It took me years to realize, like, oh boy, there's a lot of layers to one piece, like anger, there's a lot of layers, like going deeper and deeper and deeper. And you can't really push these things because it could be too much. One thing that can happen to us with the 4D is spiritual psychosis. We have Kundalini awakening. Sometimes if you're like me, please don't do what I did. I pushed a Kundalini awakening and I had like a psychotic break because I felt the energy. I was doing all these meditations and I was like, yeah, pushing because I was enthusiastic. But that's how we learn also is, when you make a mistake, you learn, right? But I pushed and I felt it snap. It hurt. It felt like a rubber band hit the top of my head. And I had like a multiple day process where I was like, oh my God, none of the food in the grocery store is actually food, like everything that's packaged, and just seeing through the illusions of so much. And it was like a David Icke, like deep dive into everything and, everything, right? The royal family. So then you get into all the conspiracy stuff. And so it's funny because all the stuff that you would say in the modern age, like all of the conspiracy research, and the royal families and all of these pieces, it's like we were looking at that stuff, during all part of the 4D. And so it's like you're taking your power back from piece by piece at a time, where we were giving our power away to like, well, they out there. So when we're going more 5D and up, it's like you start to acknowledge, like, sure, we don't love the different control mechanisms that we are still observing that are happening in 3D that we would never say is okay. There's certain things, right? And yet, it's at its end. So you don't give your power over to it anymore, or you're not living in fear, about, oh, all the water's contaminated and the chemtrails and the elf waves. And, so some of us do go overboard into this, like, oh my God, we're just bombarded, like we're being, oppressed or whatever. There's so many ways to look at this, but this is all part of the clearing. And when we realize we deserve peace and we deserve happiness, that that's actually who we really are, then we'll work our asses off to keep that. Because once you fall out of that, and again, there's purpose to everything, because you can't hold that frequency for very long because it's new. And just start to look at this as the science. It assists us to depersonalize, like, oh, I'm not doing it good enough or whatever. No, it's about being consistent. And I loved it when Annette was mentioning the books. I was like, well, some great ones are Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. That's so supportive, and it supports the higher and higher you go. The Four Agreements: make no assumptions, always do your best, be impeccable with your word, and take nothing personal. Those can assist us to exit 3D right away, because in 3D, that's everything. We assume everything, we know everything, we take it all personal, right? We're not aware of what we're saying or what we're doing energetically, our behavior. Like it's wild, and it can be kind of like and I love children. I love children, but it could be like a wild kindergarten classroom or something, of how unaware we are. But then you'll be surprised. You'll have been in 5D for some time and self-love, and you're like, oh boy, there's a whole other layer now of applied self-love, as we're clearing out even more of the density of deeper separation. And so one thing that's good to know, I learned the deeper I go, that the deeper I'm going to go. And the harder it can be, sometimes harder, because the emotions make us go unconscious. So you could have been stable in this beautiful fifth dimensional energetic and working with God consciousness and universal consciousness. And then this trigger comes. And that's why I always am saying, hey, everyone, like really follow the space weather. Just like you're looking at the weather where you live on Gaia, you need to look at the space weather, because as you're seeing and tracking, you're going to start to feel like, oh, okay, maybe, there's going to be this intense flare, and that could affect my electromagnetics. And maybe that's not the best day to have that meeting, that business meeting, or that intense conversation, whatever, start to roll with the energies, and know that you will get thrown off. That's the whole point, because we are rising every time stronger and more integrated, right? And at the end of the day, what matters most is your resilience in keeping coming back, keep stepping up, keep rising up. And yeah, you do get thrown off, but that's the whole point, because you're clearing. So I think it's really important. And I wanted to ask you, Annette, like if you could share for our audience here some examples, because I keep hearing you say it, and I wrote it down because I wanted to ask you. And then you even said, I keep mentioning this. I would love for you to share some examples with our people about using 4D to fix 3D, like where we don't really want to let go, but we want to play and try to manipulate and get everything we want, or any examples that you have for folks out there. They're trying to let go of 3D and they don't even realize that they're trying to improve it, which when it can't, or however you so brilliantly would phrase it.
Oh, you blew my light bulb out on my ring light here. Without that, I was like, oh, well, there you go. Okay. So that was so no, you know that was you that popped off. So when we start looking at fourth dimension, right? There's a couple of things that are going to push us there. It could be money, right? We want to make more money. Then you're going to get the book The Secret. You're going to get into manifesting money. You're going to get, I want to manifest this car. You're still doing it because you want something, and you want something that's valued by the human realities, right? And that's why you're doing it. When you get into energy work, even though we don't realize all this stuff we're getting into, it's raising our frequency to pull us out. But we don't realize that, right? So we use a lot of the manifestation. All manifestation is to manifest something you want that is coveted in human reality. That's based, no one's trying to manifest a completely new ascended life in the beginning, because you don't A, know what it means, and B, if you knew what it means, you would know that there's so much you have to go through to get there that you probably at that point wouldn't want it. You want it later, but not in that moment. You talk about crystals. You talk about wanting to get your all the clairaudience. You talk about clairvoyance. People want to have that stuff, but you want to have that stuff. So why? So you could see what's going to happen in your future. Am I going to end up with this person? Let me do all these activations about twin flames. Why? Because I want to attract my twin flame. We can go on and on and on about all these things we use and then try to take them back and go, well, this person, I want to be able to energetically, we had a fight and I don't want to call the person, but I want to use telepathy. I want to be able to read their field. I want to know what they're thinking. I don't know what's going on. I want to get a tarot reading and ask questions about somebody else. We do a lot of this stuff because we want to try to improve. We don't do it with a malintent. No one's going in with a malintent of taking it and using it. But that's the only life we know. Our human life is a life we know. And in that moment, when we're starting to open up and explore the metaphysical realms and our dream world and all this other stuff, there's no other thing we would do than take it and take it back. Because it's like we're hunting and gathering. We're going to go gather. What am I going to go gather and go sit over here by myself? No. Why am I going to go sit over here alone? I mean, I got all this stuff now. I'm going to go take it back over here and worry about my chakra system, because my chakra system's clean. I can attract more energy. When I ever mention anything that when I would, you try to explain to people what you do and you do the best you can with it. Everyone always asks me, well, is my energy bad? Is my energy bad? Can you tell me if my energy is bad? And that's what everyone would want to know. Is my energy bad? And what's going on with me? What do you think? Because people are so concerned about how others view them. We're so concerned about improving on how we judge ourselves on the human realm of what success is. And when we go, even crystals, crystals to open ourselves up. Yes, it's about self-love. Yes, we'll convince ourselves we want all that stuff, but we also want others to love us. And that's why we pull a lot of this stuff through. But like I said, that's the only world we know. So that's what we're going to do. We have not gotten to the point where we realize none of that stuff matters and it's going to go anyway. But all the stuff we're utilizing, even pendulums, anyone ever got a pendulum to play with a pendulum, you're asking it questions. Even if you learn in tarot, you're doing a tarot and asking a question. And I'm going to guarantee you it's a question about your human experience. You're not asking it a question about your ascended life, because once you get far enough into ascension, you don't really play with tarot too much anymore. Or you play with it in a different way. Give me anything. Give me something else, Marissa. Give me another tool in the fourth dimension. I can't think of any right now. I'm kind of starting to draw a blank. I guess I'm getting tired. Pendulums, tarot cards, books, manifesting. This book, The Secret. Throw in some more here. Give me something else. I'm trying to think of something else. Even your dream world. We're trying to dream the future. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tap, or we're trying to share dreams with other people. It can get very convoluted, but I'm gonna mute for a second and let you.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and this is you're helping us to get to the core essences, to kind of delineate some of the 4D themes, which I would say motivation. What's the motivation, and what are the priorities? And you want to look and see, is this something that is societally imprinted? Is mainstream? Is it a human preference or human value or construct or definition of any aspect of my beingness? Or is this coming from a higher energetic, a higher power, a higher calling, a divinity, right? A purifying, like I want to bring something forth that's totally new, and revolutionary, and it's for all. So we begin to expand beyond, for self, right? And self, service to self. That's a huge jump gate, I would say, is, when you're starting to realize like service to self versus service to others, and starting to feel more of the interconnectedness of the impact that we have in our unconsciousness or in our consciousness, which is so important to consider. And so you'll start to feel called, because there's only so far you can go in 4D. I personally, I love all the examples you are giving us, Annette, because like for me, I don't really even like to use labels, but sometimes you have to in order to kind of give someone an idea of what you're talking about, but you don't really resonate with them. It's like, what are you going to use? 200 words to describe yourself? Psychic medium, shaman, like, yeah, I guess we have to use them in the keywords for the algorithm on YouTube, right? Or TikTok or Instagram. So you see where those are still valuable. But when you're engaging in those systems, so for instance, I had to leave all the psychic networks that I was a part of because no one wanted to utilize the gifts I have in like Akashic soul expansion phase to work on themselves. They want to use this energy to spy on other people, everything that you were sharing. How can I make them, or how can I take something out there to make me feel better in here? It was never about personal development, sovereignty, taking responsibility. And so this kind of circles us back to the beginning when we're talking about the play and like the starseed consciousness, that at a certain point it's time to grow up, because there's only so far you can go and you're no longer satisfied, because those are still 3D constructs, and you realize that this is where we hold ourselves back, is we have to revisit our priorities. And do we feel online with our soul? Where do we feel the disparity? And the big piece I was going to share before we swapped here was everything. I want to invite you all here in the audience for a little exercise. Everything in this moment that you want to that will make you feel good, or everything that you feel you do not have. So some examples, let's say we feel like we need to be validated. No one will validate us. No one will listen. No one will recognize us. So you want to start with those pieces, or no one will value us in our experience. We have all this love to give. No one wants it, or no one can reciprocate it, or no one can understand or value. So this is where we want to flip it back around and make it all about yourself. And this is where
And
I
I
talk about, oh, sorry.
in there about when you say, what do you want? Is there a physical thing you want? And does that tie back into validation? Because sometimes we say, oh, I just want this, but we want it because it ties back into validation. That's kind of the what we don't see a lot. I think that's can be a lot of that disconnect in the beginning, right? We say, we want this car, I want this, or I want this person, and we don't understand there's something underneath that. And that's where the fourth dimension kind of gets us to. It's the underneath. What's underneath that? But that's more toward the end of the fourth dimension that we start getting. And the channeling, that's part of fourth dimension. Medium, you hit them all, some more of them, shaman, Reiki, that's all fourth dimensional kind of stuff. But if we don't do it, we can't get our frequency up to leave it.
That's right.
So I'm going to let you finish, but I just want to throw that in. So if people start thinking about, okay, maybe I can't even go as deep as Marissa can go right now, but what's a thing I want? I'm going to mute.
I love that. Thank you. That's, sorry, I keep getting calls, the thing doing this on our phone. That's the piece, is what are we seeking? Where do we feel separate? We perceive that there's something outside of us, a situation, a person, a thing that's going to make us feel happy. Well, let's cut all that out and just say, I want to be happy. How do I be happy? Or I want to feel love. How do I feel that? So this is the process of becoming the energy of the thing that we conceptually, linearly think will bring us, the sense of satisfaction, happiness, ease, whatever, right? This is where grace comes in. And this is where, for me, a lot of the aspects of the Divine Mother. So 5D, now as we get deeper into 5D, it becomes Divine Mother energy, sacred feminine energies, a lot of reparenting, but softness and love and holding ourselves. So it's almost like there's an angelic version of you that's holding the wounded, separated, the victim, part of you through these processes of witnessing yourself, going through these different painful moments, or crazy or snotty, lots of crying, going through our ugly moments, which are not ugly. It's just a way of saying that we don't want to look at them. Perhaps we don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. And again, this is taking our power back from thinking we have to do everything perfect, or that there's a right way, right? Or that there's this cookie cutter way. And this is all part of, I say, is deprogramming the industrial era, right? Because once industrialism began, we were all separated from nature and from a lot of these kind of Lemurian concepts, that are heart-centered, being closer to the earth and to one another and making things by hand. This is the beginning of what really separated us through the convenience of technology, devices, and so on. So anyways,
I would throw religion in. We didn't really touch on religion, but religion is fourth dimension. I mean, it is. I mean, it's third dimension, but it carries over into the fourth dimension because you start questioning that. You start questioning everything. And that goes into, how do you start to feel about it? And I'm gonna mute again. I just want to throw that in because we hadn't even touched on it, and I wanted to. Someone made a comment below, and it kind of brought it up for me, so that's why.
Yeah, so I don't know, we're getting close to our time. I don't know if anyone has any questions, about working with this or anything they're observing. We may not have enough people for questions right now, but in the future, I would say please leave them also in the video replay, in the comments for us. We can address them next week with different things. I think we touched on a lot here, really beautifully. There's a lot to look at here. There's a lot to unpack, right? And ultimately, just know, like we've said, like parts of you can be through multiple places. That's kind of part of fragmentation. That's normal. So it's all good. It's all perfect. And that's part of it too. Is we have to start to let ourselves unconditionally realize that we're here on the path. We're here now, aren't we? And what's possible. And just start small. Just start small. And we'll continue to go deeper. But I feel complete with this. How about you, Annette?
I do. That's one thing I want to. It's funny because I need to start bringing a pen and paper. I usually just do stream of consciousness, so I don't really bring a pen and paper, but I need to because you'll say something and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And then I forget about it. And as soon as it's gone, as soon as I'm like, oh crap, no, I forgot. Let me see if I can get it back. Give me a second. Let me see if I can remember what it was. It's kind of flew by. I don't know if I'll remember it. It might be gone now. All right. Well, I guess I'll save it for another time. I can't remember what it is now. What was the last thing you said? Do you remember?
I wish I could tell you.
Greg.
Yeah, I get too
One
excited
thing
to
I
see.
will say, and this is probably not what I was going to say, because like I said, I can't remember. I can't remember what it was anymore. It literally was right there, and I'm like, God, I wish I had a piece of paper. I don't know. I think I just have like this little Lego set my godson put together. That's all. That's all I got, and I can't write with that. Um, Let me see. Don't be in such a rush to kind of. I know we've kind of and my intention is never to paint the fourth dimension as, oh, it's not as great as everybody thinks it is. It's such a pivotal part, and oh, now I remember what it was. When we first start out, your universe is going to make it so easy. You're going to do one thing energetically, and you're going to be like, oh boy, I wish John would call today. And then John freaking calls, and you're going to be like, you got to be kidding me. John just called, and all I said was, hey, I wish John would call. And you're gonna go outside and go, oh, I want to see a blue car. And a blue car rolls by. You're like, no fucking way. That did not just happen. It's going to be a lot of low hanging fruit in the beginning because your universe is trying to say, hey, look, there's something to this, right? Because if we started it and nothing happened, we would give up immediately as human. It's because of our level of human programming in that moment, we would completely give up. If it didn't happen instantaneous for us in the beginning, we'd be like, this is some crap. Forget about it. If you say, I'm going to go to bed and I want to dream on this. I want to explore this in my dream state. You'll explore it in your dream state. I explained shared dreaming to this woman once. She did it one night and had a shared dream with her daughter. Just immediately it worked for her. In the beginning, a lot of it works right away because our universe wants to hook us on. There's something here. Keep going. Don't be discouraged when all of a sudden it doesn't work as quick because our intentions of why we want it start to come into play later on. As well as Marissa and I both touched on in this talk today. Our intentions start to affect it later. And we can't keep doing something because we want it. And it doesn't come as easy anymore. When we first start, it's going to feel easier, because, there was a trick I used to teach people, and it was you get a phone, and I didn't come up with this. It was on YouTube somewhere, but it was a trick I would use to show people where you would take the phone and write a person's name down the part of the phone horizontally or vertically and then horizontally, and then I don't know, circle 3 times and touch your third eye, something like that. Didn't really matter doing all that. It was more the intention of thinking about this person and see how long it took that person to call. And start with the person you had no issue with, someone that wasn't mad at you. So that when they got the ping, when you popped into their mind, they would have no reason to say, oh, I'm not going to call Marissa because Marissa's pissed at me, right? It'd be like, oh, Annette, I think I wanted to talk to Annette today because everything was cool. And you'd be surprised how many people would come up to me next time they saw me and go, oh my God, that totally worked. Because it was just showing if you had some kind of clear intention, it would work because there's something there. So in the beginning, it's fun and have fun with it because that's what it's supposed to be. But don't be surprised if later on, maybe a couple of years later, all of a sudden it's not as easy anymore. And you start trying to manifest something because now we're getting into what's highest aligned. And in the beginning, it's highest aligned for us just to learn about this stuff and us to unlock it within ourselves. And that's highest aligned. And if our universe has to throw us a couple bones, it'll throw us a couple bones because they know later on it's all going to go anyway. Our soul doesn't care about it, right? But it's hooking us. So don't be surprised if later on, when you start getting into that wasn't highest line, that it's not going to happen now. Because when you start getting to the end of the fourth dimension, end of the fifth, end of the sixth, if it's not highest line, the shit's not going to happen. And that doesn't mean you might go through something and say, how can that be highest aligned? Because it was highest aligned for something you were doing in that moment. It might have been highest aligned to a human experience you needed to have, but it was still highest aligned to something. So I just want to throw that in, and now I'm going to let you close it out. But I wanted to mention that because I know sometimes I feel like I can be all negative Nelly about it, but there's so much fun. And if you've never tried that trick with your phone, try that trick with your phone because it's super fun and super quick how quick that works. And it's just a fun thing. Or if you have people in your life that don't believe in it and go, the energy stuff's stupid, try that. Try the phone trick. See what happens. And it just hooks people. It gets them a little bit interested. It just explores. It just stretches their mind. So okay, you close it out. I'm gonna mute. Bye everybody. I'm not gonna say bye again. Okay.
Thank you, Annette. That's so awesome. That's so valuable because it's a very important part. We're playing so much, exploring so much, receiving the magic, and that's what keeps us, and asking like, "Oh, universe, will you bring me a unicorn today?" And then there it is on someone's. You're driving through town, and someone's at the crosswalk, and there's a unicorn on their shirt or their lunchbox. It's the lucid. The lucid. So you start to see what's possible. You start to get an idea of like, oh, I can have some say in this. As a co-creator. And with that, though, we bring in even more elements of what's highest aligned. And I feel like this will be a great topic for next week is taking it into higher awareness, of we're releasing more and more of our need to be in charge completely. And so this is where we start to come into the universal. We're like, oh, I'm actually one with my universe. Sometimes I split off from it and we're communicating. And then other times I can be in that and be one with it and also be guided by it. So it's not just like my human will or my human ego, trying to create or control, but it's a like almost like you're both on a ship, or a co-creative effort, a collaborative effort where you realize, well, I don't have access to everything yet. I'm not omnipotent, right? And I'm all omniscient, all seeing yet. We may have moments of it, which are beautiful. And so it's a humbling as well. And always being open to grow and learn more and realize that we are perpetually, the student and the teacher, right? Always, always. So there's this humbling and that there's deeper and deeper levels to go to because that's what we came here for. And eventually, yeah, we get to a part where we really aren't clearing very much, and that's when you get in 5 and 6 and 8 and all these things. But you're still going to have dips down and you're still going to observe because not everyone's on the same page at the same time. So it's an amazing opportunity, to be living this way. So I thank you all so much for joining us. And Annette, thank you for everything you shared. I think you've really supported everyone to see. Yeah. So I thank you so much and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, everyone. Much love.